Ding. Okay. Yeah. So welcome and thank you everyone for joining today's session of the online lecture series Democracy and Religious Education in Indonesia, funded by the Berlin University Alliance. I'm Adisa and I'm happy to moderate this lecture. And I would like to welcome our guest lecturer, Irfan El Sarhindi. Welcome and thank you very much, Kang Irfan, for your time. Irfan El Sarhindi holds a master's degree from University College London, reading for philosophy of education. He's now the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities at University of Putra Indonesia, the Director of Yayasan Literasi Naratif Islami, and Chief of Salamul Falah, an Islamic short course program that aims to prevent radicalization through strengthening critical thinking and contextual Islam. Aside from being a lecturer, Irfan is a productive writer. So during 2007 until 2009, he has published more than 200 popular essays on various Islamic online media. He was also named as an inspirational Indonesian youth by Tempo Media Institute. And in 2020, he received a fellowship from the Dutch government for the Producing Media to Counter Radicalization short course. Kang Irfan's topic is about the politics of moderation, digitalized Islamic education, and the future of Indonesia's democracy and interreligious tolerance. After the presentation, we will have discussion or Q&A. And for this, I would like to encourage those who have questions to use the virtual hand or the raise hand function, or simply put your question in the chat. So now, please, Kang Irfan, the screen and the time are all yours.
Thank you, Badisa, for moderating this event, and I'm truly honored and humbled to be here, to be able to being trusted to deliver my thought about the politics of Islamic moderation in the situation when Islamic education goes digital, and how this too will intervene and influence the future of Indonesia's democracy and interreligious tolerance. As perhaps you are familiar with the picture, I use the so-called Menara Kudus, the minaret in Kudus that become the symbol first of Islamic moderation itself when Islam was spread in Java, and the Muslim can be coexist with the Hindus population there. And this menara also the symbol of how the preaching of Islamic moderation conducted by the so-called Wali Songo, the Ninth Saint, was using politics as one of the aspects of their preaching. So in this tonight here we are at 7 p.m. So I call it tonight. I will try to, by articulating the opinion about Indonesian Islam that is called Islam with the smiling face. And when Indonesian Islam is regarded as Islam with the expression of the smiling face, people often try to indicate this smiling face with three attributes. First is how Indonesian Islam could compatible with the democracy, and how Indonesia's Islam accommodate nationalism as part of their faith, and how Indonesia's Islam provide a room for acculturation between Islamic values with traditional or local wisdom to happen. And in terms of this Islamic moderation in Indonesia that used by term is the smiling face, Martin van Bruynesen has articulated his idea about the degree, the spectrums in which so Martin van Bruynesen has delivered his idea about how the smiling face of Indonesian Islam is not expression, rather it's a multi-expression, multi-spectrum of the expression. And he stated that Indonesian Islam could be of could be of five identities. Three of them are considered moderate, which are conservative, progressive, and liberal, and the other two are considered radical, which are fundamentalists and Islamists. And according to Martin van Burinesen, Indonesia's Islam is now heading to become more conservative, or as he put it, become less and less smiling. And in this regard, I think there is also the strengthening of Indonesian Islam to be more ultra-conservative, and I put it as the in between the radical and moderate, because ultra-conservative share similarities with radical in terms of interpreting Islam in literal and rigid way. However, they differ the radical viewpoint of Islam in terms of conducting violence in order to enacting the Caliphate or Islamic State. And how does this ultra-conservative narrative become the mainstream narrative of Indonesia's Islam? I think, 10 to 15 years. First is because the spread of the narrative through the internet. It is believed that the ultra-conservative preacher is more capable on optimizing technology, in this case internet, in order to spread their ideas and their interpretation of Islam. And in this case, they also use the influence of micro celebrity in order to gain more influence through the young Muslims. And the other case is when we look to the educational system in Indonesia, there are findings that state that teachers and content of textbook are less capable of acknowledging the diversity. In this case, some teachers do understand that Indonesia is diverse, but they didn't have an experience of being lived in such a diverse environment. So in some extent, they have some kind of homogeneous perspective in terms of how to interpret the religious tolerance. And in this case, I think I will touch it later on. The possibility of symbolic violence to happen is quite high. The other things is the religious community within school. We call it rohis, a student who affiliate with the community that serve for the masjid within the scope of school. Some of these communities are affiliated to the ultra-conservative movement or for Islamist parties, and they use these communities to spread the doctrine of Islamism or post-Islamism. Lastly, the other things that become the channel of how the ultra-conservative narratives spread in Indonesia is through Islamic books. It is known that the Islamic books are dominated by disseminating the ultra-conservative viewpoints and apocalypticism. So this kind of books are very popular and always become bestseller in comparison to books promoting moderate view of Islam, even though NU, as the Islamic organization in Indonesia who fight for this moderation, is considered the biggest Islamic organization in Indonesia and even called in the world. But the fact that the very popular books, Islamic books in Indonesia, are disseminating the narrative of ultra-conservative and apocalypticism. And this is also the finding that students who access internet in order to learn about Islam are highly influenced by radical ideas of Islam. The research is conducted by Convey, I think, by Convey, by UIN Jakarta, and they find this challenging situation when the internet is used as the vehicle or medium, and how radical view is disseminated. This is the other thing that I think influence on how this ultra-conservative turn become more mainstream. This is the Aksi Bela Islam series, which I think relevant to the narrative of post-Islamist populism. I call it post-Islamist populism because the populism gained by Aksi Bela Islam is narrowly aiming to the enactment of NKRI bersyariah, the Sharia, the Islamic version, according to them, of Indonesia's democracy. And these are some narrative that I found from the series of Aksi 212, the action to defend Islam from 2016 to 2019, such as Islam versus the state. This narrative is not new in terms of Indonesia. We can find this narrative in the early enactment of Indonesia's democracy. Another narrative is Islam is weakened and Muslim and ulama are marginalized, and so they need to fight for Islamic radicalism. In doing so, they need to vote for NKRI bersyariah. They need to support the Muslim political figure over the non-Muslim political figure, and in doing so, they have no hesitant in expressing public piety as political aspiration. And the impact are as follow. First is the growing of anti-Chinese and anti-communist sentiment. This related to the unfinished history in Indonesia, specifically when it comes to the COP trial in 1965. And this Aksi 212 has also impact in creating religious polarization, and this also exercise the hegemony and symbolic violence that I have mentioned earlier. In terms of how the Muslims, even though they have get many privilege of being the majority in Indonesia, they often feel that they are discriminated, and with this perspective, they try to claim the more Islamic Indonesias, which I think, in some respect, creating the violence for the minor group, specifically in terms of weakening the political rights of the minor groups. So if we flashback with this Aksi 212, we know that Basuki Cahayapurnama is a Chinese. He is also a Christian, and the narrative developed during the heat of Jakarta's governor electoral was that a Muslim need to vote for Muslim governor. So according to Lingkar Survey Indonesia, even though culturally tolerance, Indonesia's tolerance is increased, the political intolerance is increased on the other hand. And this is the glance of how Indonesia's religious tolerance are. Almost 60% Indonesia's young Muslims have the religious perspective in terms of being tolerant, and they express the behavior of moderate Islam reached to almost 75. There is the interesting point. Indonesian Muslims are considered more tolerant to another religion in comparison to the groups within the Islam itself. And this is related to the finding by Wahid Institute that state that 49% of Indonesian Muslims have hatred toward communism, Jewism, Christian, Shia, Wahhabism, Buddhism, and Chinese. Shia, Wahhabism, and Ahmadiyya are the minor group within Islam, which often seen are the heretic sect of Islam. specifically in terms of Ahmadiyya. They were in several occasions being the victim of attack conducted by Front Pembela Islam or Islamic Defender Front in the spirit of defending Islam in their perspective. So this situation, I think, related to a certain degree with problematic policies, such as the policy on religious blasphemy, which has witnessed the criminalization of Basuki Cahayapurnama and how this developed to the aspiration of post-Islamic populism through the year. And also another problematic policies is the joint ministerial decree on the enacting worship place that has discriminated the non-Muslims, and then the joint decree of 3 ministries on the heretic of Ahmadiyya that have seen the attack to the Ahmadiyyah's member and the marginalization of them. In terms of political aspiration and ideology, I found an interesting case, which 80% students disagree the stipulation that Indonesia's ideology is Togut or infidelity, which means the support to Indonesia's current ideology or political system, which we have the so-called Pancasila. But however, 91.23% students are also interested in witnessing the implementation of Islamic Sharia and Caliphate in Indonesia. So it is quite contradictory, but this is the finding that the researchers find interesting. And in terms of the interest on implementing the Islamic Sharia, I found three general classification in this aspiration. First is the support to democracy. Second is support to the Islamic version according to them of Indonesia's democracy, which called NKRI Bersyariah. And another is the support to the enactment of Islamic State. And in terms of the support to democracy, the survey conducted by LSE found that the support to the democracy from 2005 to 2018 is found decreasing, and the support to NKRI Bersyariah is quite high, almost reach 60%, and the support to Islamic State is also found increased from 11.3 in 2016 to 16.9 in 2019. I think to some extent, this increase of support to NKRI Bersyariah and or Islamic State have something to do with the development of Action to Defend Islam or Aksi 212 that promote and strengthen the aspiration of post-Islamist populism. Okay, this is the aspect of democracy and how the development of post-Islamism challenge the democracy and interreligious tolerance and intra-religious tolerance in Indonesia. And before I further explain about the state of democracy, I would like to get back to the Islamic education at first, and this is how Indonesia's Islamic education, in my view. This is the 4 types, general types of Indonesia's education: pesantren, madrasah, integrated school, or sekolah Islam terpadu, and Islamic higher education. And I tried to differentiate, to make some glance of this difference between these 4 types of Islamic education through 4 dimensions, from type of schooling, curriculum, boarding or not boarding, and the authority. And we can see that pesantren has many distinction in relation to the other 3. I would like to deepen the articulation of pesantren, which many people believe that pesantren is the fortress of Islamic moderation, specifically in Indonesia. And if we talk pesantren as the fortress of Islamic moderation in Indonesia, we can see the context and the complexity of pesantren. Pesantren is the oldest Islamic education in Indonesia, and it has vast numbers. Some of them even does not recorded by the Ministry of Religious Affairs. According to the ministry, the number of pesantren reached more than 26,000, but I believe it's far larger than that, because my pesantren, my family's pesantren itself, is not recorded by the ministry, even though my family's pesantren has been 100 years old. And pesantren is perceived to be the portals of Islamic moderation because the strong influence of Sufism that promote what is called peaceful jihad. Jihad that not concern on attacking people and murder people which is considered infidel or need to be blamed for the weaken of Islam or Muslim community, but peaceful jihad is concerned on trying to kill the side of ourselves that bad. So peaceful jihad is often focused on how to make ourselves better rather than to accusing people for doing some sins. And this because these pesantren are old in terms of age, pesantren has been the basis of Indonesia's civil struggle for independence, as it become the alternative education for the grassroots as well. And how does this pesantren teaching Islam? I found that pesantren have 6 approach in terms of pedagogical, which are bandongan, memorization, sorogan, basul masail, habituation, and muhadarah. Bandongan is very similar to the teacher-centered type of banking pedagogy. Memorization is, as you know, it memorize things, and it's become quite instrumental in the teaching of pesantren. Sorogan is the combination of one-on-one mentorship with memorization. Basul Masail is the discussion between santri or pesantren student in order to try to answer the contextual problem by using the canon or the Islamic source of law, and using the rationalization in terms of how interpreting this Islamic source of law. The next one is habituation in terms of how pesantren try to instill and create a kindness habit in santris. And the last one is muhadara, which santris is given a chance to try to articulate their thinking or their thought, and it's try to develop the soft skill of the santri. Values instilled in pesantren, I found 5. 4 are according to Bull, who has conducted research in pesantren in Depok under the Kiai Haji Ahmad Mujadi, and he found that Indonesia's pesantren has instilled the value of being of simplicity in living, or of selflessness, so self-sufficiency, Islamic brotherhood. And I added this with kindness and integrity, because in pesantren we are taught about ihsan, which is the understanding and the consciousness that everything we do, we are being watched by the God. So we need to do everything according to God's will, not to according to our expectation about what the society will react to our deed. And however, even though this context and these values are very very clear on instilling the Islamic moderation, pesantrens are also being the subject of criticism for producing the less critical Muslim. And this critique is referred to how pesantren insist the approach of bandungan, memorization, and sorogan. But I found that the bandungan, memorization, and sorogan is not the sole approach in pesantren, but the approach that concern on gathering the or on gathering the prior knowledge for the santri, and it is synchron with what Christo Dole state about gathering prior knowledge of the santri. And santri is trained to think critically through bahsul masail by so pendongan memorization and sorogan try to fill the santri with basic knowledge they need to in order to help them think critically during bahsul masail. This is why I use the title of the digitalized Islamic education, because traditionally when we talk about Indonesia's Islam education, traditional education is instrumental in constructing Islamic identity, because for example NU has this network of pesantren in order to create a traditionalist Muslim. Muhammadiyah has a network of school with construct the identity of modernist Muslim today, helped by this digitalization. There are some quite new challenges in terms of first that people start to use internet as the main source of learning and teaching Islam, and it found that several figure has been found through some research according this, but it can be concluded that the majority of young Muslim in Indonesia now has turned to internet to learn and teach Islam, and this is not without the impact. I noticed that there are at least three impacts of the situation. First is there are many hoax and hate speech widespread using religious sentiment, and many illiterate Muslim manipulated by this. For example, I witnessed that many santris in my city went to Jakarta in order to join the Aksi 212, and they went to Jakarta in the purpose of what they believe as defending Islam, although we can argue about that. And some of the information that they use as the basis of their judgment is considered hoax and hate speech. So this is the challenge of current condition in Indonesia in terms of how the Islamic education's environment is changed due to digitalization, and how the ultra-conservative narrative use the internet in order to spread their narrative and their ideas. The second is the rise of what is called Ustad Celeb, which is the celebrity who suddenly turn to become the Islamic preacher, even though they have no prior knowledge in terms of Islam, and that they have been used by the ultra-conservative movement in order to gain influence among young Muslim. This rise of Ustad Celeb also disrupt the traditional Islamic authority when people more trust more to this Ustad Celeb rather than the traditional ulama or traditional cleric that has knowledge, that has the credibility of Islamic knowledge. The last thing is the disruption of identities barrier. For example, NU has this traditionalist, Muhammadiyah has this modernist, and they have their own Islamic educational institution in order to construct this type of identity. But now with the internet, everyone could learn from everyone, which we can see that some of people who perhaps identically NU, Nahdlatul Ulama or traditionalist, but also follow the like of, for example, Felix Xiao or Hizbut Tahrir Indonesia, and they, in political aspect, adopt the political aspiration of Hizbut Tahrir Indonesia, even though in terms of ritual and Islamic thought, they follow the Nahdlatul Ulama. This is the situation that need to be addressed, because this is related to the construction of new identity of Indonesia's Muslims. And with this situation of Indonesia's democracy and interreligious tolerance and how they support to implement Sharia or Islamic State is increased, and how the Aksi 21 Dia has heightened the tension and religious polarization between specifically Muslim communities, Indonesia's government then decided to take Islamic moderation as its policy, although some might see this action as using Islamic moderation as a tool to weaken the opposition to the government. And when it comes to the Islamic moderation as political policy, we can see this as the policy on Indonesia's middle and long-term development plan. And Islamic moderation is put alongside the ideologization of Pancasila and the strengthening of literasi. I use these three as relevant because one of the case of Islamic radicalization has something to do with the capability of literacy and how this Islamic moderation is often being done hand in hand with the strengthening of Pancasila. This is the detail of what is told in Indonesia's middle and long-term development in terms of the ideologization of Pancasila and the strengthening of Islamic moderation and the strengthening of Indonesia's literacy. But we can see that in terms of ideologization of Pancasila, there is the point in terms of sweep out the elements that consider threatening the nation's ideology, and this this is the part that some people considered as government use the Islamic moderation as tools to weaken the opposition. This is the strategy to counter radicalization based on the plan of ideologization of Pancasila and Islamic moderation. Some Islamic organizations that consider threatening Indonesia's harmony and democracy were banned. In this case, we have Hizbut Tahrir Indonesia, which was banned in 2017, and Islamic Defender Front of our FPI, which was banned, I think, in 2019 or 2019. And Indonesia's government also have blocked website narrating Islamic radicalization, radicalism, or extremism up to more than 27,000 web up to 2017, according to the survey conducted by UIN Jakarta. This banning of Islamic organization for Greg Philly is considered as repressive pluralism. It has something to do with how the term of radicalization is often used by buzzer or some kind like that as a jargon or justification to jeopardize Islamic key leader. For example, from Habib Rizik Sihab or some key leader of 212 or Action to Defend Islam. Some of them face cases that considered by many people as the approach of Indonesia's government to try to weaken the Islamist movement. For Greg Philly, even though he agree on the need on strengthening Islamic moderation and maintaining Indonesia's democracy, harmony, and tolerance, he sees that Indonesia's government, in a way or two, try to shut down the Islamic organization that considered violating the human rights. Recently, we have the case of shooting. Six members of Front Pembela Islam were being shot, but the case is I don't know, is not going anywhere. So this kind of thing that gravely is considered repressive pluralism. However, irrespective of this complexity and dynamic of the effort on strengthening Islamic moderation and how the take of government to make the Islamic moderation as the policy has face some critics, and how the environment of Islamic education has faced the disruption in order the provider of Islamic education need to look at themselves and try to respond to this change. I see that there are efforts to remainstreaming Islamic moderation and tolerance by civil organization and individuals, and this is a good case. As for now, I think the idea of Islam wasatiyah, or the Islam or moderate Islam, is become mainstream among people. I can also say that one political party who support Islamic populism during the heat of Aksi 212 has now explicitly support for Islamic moderation, or use the term of Islamic moderation as a mean to gain more voters for the party. And this is my experience of trying to disseminating the idea of Islamic moderation through offline and online. Adding to what Mbak Disa has mentioned previously about Salamul Fala, the short course program that I found and run with my college and families and friends in order to instill critical thinking in children, because I believe that this critical thinking would help them to prevent from being radicalized. Other than that, I found a podcast program called Podcast Ren, and through Podcast Ren, I tried to deliver a contextual interpretation of Islam in the interest of enriching the narrative of Islam in the internet. I also help the like of Toleransi ID and Millennial Islami on conducting workshop, short course, competition on Islamic moderation, critical thinking, empathy, and tolerance between 2017 to 2019. And through this, I have seen that although some surveys state that young Muslims started to be more intolerant, I think there are hope that the numbers of young Muslim obliged to this moderation is also high. Lastly, I developed this chatbot called Chatbot Bineka. This is the teaching aid equipment I developed with Yayasan Perguruan Sultan Iskandar Muda and IR for Impact. And with this chatbot, we try to help teacher in order to teach the diversity of Indonesia's religions and belief. And with this first type of Chatbot Bineka, we provide 6 religions and 2 indigenous beliefs that a student can learn through games. So they will do a virtual travel to 6 to each host of religions and indigenous beliefs through 3 levels. The first level is about the tradition, culture, and food in the holy day of religion or beliefs. The second level is on the ritual, and the last level is on the philosophy. This is our effort in order to provide a room for this diverse group of Indonesia's young to understand the difference, to experience the diversity, and not to ignore this, because some of the challenge of Indonesia's democracy and interreligious tolerance relies on the fact that many of Indonesian Muslim live and learn in such a homogeneous environment, so they have no chance in order to meet people with different values, different religions. So it in a way it build a stereotype and stigma over people who share different vision. And lastly, I think there is a blessing in disguise in terms of the situation of this pandemic, because pesantren, who is considered as the fortress of Indonesian Islamic moderation, are commonly available offline, but given to this pandemic, many pesantren has forced to be available online, and this is enrich the content of Islamic moderation in the internet. And this is the case that I called that how the Islamic moderation become mainstreaming again. Even though I don't know, I'm not sure about how many years we need to 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 turn this ultra conservative situation to be perhaps progressive kind of moderate Muslims. I think this is some kind of my thought about the politics of Islamic moderation in such a digitalized Islamic education, and how these two influence the situation of Indonesia's democracy and interreligious tolerance. I let the floor to Disabek. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kang Irfan, for a very interesting presentations and show us some of your activities. That's also very good and great, I think. So now we can open the Q&A session. So yeah, once again, that if you have a question, you can raise the hand with the function, or just put it in the chat first. Are there any question here, or maybe I can start because I have a question also, some question for Kang Irfan. Yeah, I was wondering about the story of your personal experience, Kang Irfan, with your background from the pesantren, and then after that, your effort to teach teach Islam moderation to the young generation, that also in if I'm not mistaken, in Salamul Falah from your pesantren. I was wondering how was the response from the family and the kiai, because you mentioned that this is the pesantren that already run for 100 years from family to family, and then yeah, how is the response of the family pesantren in this effort of yours? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Marisa. This is the interesting question, because when we started to conduct Salamul Falah, we tried to provide what the pesantrens people considered as an uncommon approach of pedagogical, because in pesantren we have commonly do di Bandungan and Sorogan, which put a teacher or kiai as the center of knowledge, as the only person in the classroom who has knowledge, and in doing so, some santri could see themselves as people who have nothing in their mind. But with Salamul Falah, we tried to turn the tables around. We try to make the student think and try to make the situation of learning more fun, more cheerful. They do games. They watch videos in television, and they compete with each other in such competition in our classroom. And yeah, we let the noise happen in our classroom, because what these children are meant to in the classroom. And during our first 3 years, I remember I faced many critic and challenge from within our cycle. They question my approach. They question how they think that my approach on teaching, my pedagogical approach in Salamul Falah, is as something that violating the rule of pesantren, and something that need to be stopped. But within these 3 years, I tried to negotiate with my families, with the kiais, and I tried to ensure them that my pedagogical approach was necessary in terms of responding to the current development and current situation, and how this is relevant to the nature of how children learn. After 3 or 4 years, they started to support the program. Yeah. So yeah, so the challenge is within the first 3 years. And another challenge was related to how the Salamul Falah is run by male and female. For a few group in my pesantren, it will be better if female is not being involved in the running of the program, but I say to him that the number of our student is large, and it is hard to find the male only to run the program. And in fact, many of the process that happen is better to be done by female. So make this combination of male and female is necessary in order to make the authority of Islam not dominated by the male only. So this is also the case in pesantren where female has little chance to become the leader of the pesantren.
Okay, thank you very much. I see some questions in our chat here. Then I will just read also for you. So the first one is from Papa Asmil Tayeb. So thank you, Kang Irfan, for the presentation and your efforts to promote moderation. The question is, how much influence does NU have in shaping Jokowi's repressive pluralism policy, especially with NU leaders occupying Wapres and Menak positions? And maybe we can also wrap to the second question from Fadilah Triawulandari here, that she said that after 212 movement, where do you see the future of Indonesia's Islamic agenda? Will the 212 movement still have a significant impact in influencing the political contestation in 2024? Yeah.
Wow, it's very tough questions. I try to answer, even though I'm not sure how correct my response will be, because I'm no longer within the milieu of this political ring one. But as the NO myself, as the NO member myself, I see that NU is the only Islamic organization that I think which explicitly expressing its opposition toward this Islamist group. For example, if we talk about FPI, FPI is often put in a conflictual position with NU. So NU versus FPI is always the debate around this Islamic moderation, never FPI versus Muhammadiyah. Gitu. And I also find an interesting case when the NU's member in West Java is often has this double identity, which they perceive themselves as culturally Nahdlatul Ulama, but politically FPI. So in terms of the idea, I think if we define repressive pluralism as the banning of this Islamist organization, that I think NU has a strong influence. I don't know it is direct or indirect, but it's seemingly for me indirect influence on how the idea of NUs in seeing this Islamist group has saving the policy of the banning of Islamist organizations such as FPI and HTI. And it can be seen also when the burning of the so-called Tauhid flag in 2018. The Tauhid flag is considered the flag of Hizbut Tahrir Indonesia, but then it is considered as the flag of the Prophet, Islamic the Prophet and the plague of Islamic revivalism, and the idea of defending Islamic flag is often stayed hand in hand with the opposition toward the NU. So NU always become the enemy of this populist Islamism. So I can imagine how this repressive pluralism can always be in some respect relation with the NU's position within the government that we can see in the vice president and the minister of religious affairs. Specifically, when we talk about the Minister of Religious Affairs, we know that his experience in running Banser, which always confront the Front Pembela Islam. So yeah, it's not surprising when we see Front Pembela Islam was banned up 2019. I hope that answer. I don't know if there is answer any of it at all, but this is my thought about this repressive pluralism and how the influence FNU. And for Padilla, okay. I actually conduct this research on 212. I try to map the narrative of 212 from 2016 to 29 and try to understand the narrative within the change of triggering issues, the change of composition of figure and Islamic organization within this movement. And I found that the narrative of the Aksi 212 is on post-Islam. In this case, is to promote NKRI bersyariah. Irrespective of the issue that trigger, the narrative is always to oppose the current government and try to offer what they call the Muslim Muslim political figure. For example, after Prabowo and Sandiaga Uno joined the cabinet of the administration of Pak Jokowi, it is Anies Baswedan which is considered the figure that selected by ulama and the Muslim Ummah to become the new political leader. So I think there is not much impact will be brought about given there is no issues that quite strong to trigger another Aksi 212, and some of the key leader of Aksi 212 itself has been weakened, such as Habib Rizik Sihab has been faced this criminal case, Habib Bahar, and so on and so forth. So it will maintain the narrative about Islam versus the state, but I'm not sure it will gain the popularity of Islamists into becoming the more higher the more mainstream narrative of Islam in the political sphere.
Yeah, and there is another question here from Zaskia. Zaskia said, thank you very much for this great talk. And then we know pretty well that hate speech looks like, but the opposite seems less clear to me. Could you give us some examples for pluralist content that works well in online network?
Let me think for a second. I think according to what we have done with Millennial Islami and Toleransi ID, for example, we try to develop this kind of photo competition that represent the pluralism and diversity, and many people try to create a photo or even a video showing young people expressing tolerance, and I think this is one of the content that created in terms of online that provide a story about how Indonesia's Muslim looks like. rather than Muslim that portrayed through the media in the light of Aksi 212. For example, we in Millennial Islami and Toleransi ID provide a story about, for example, a mother in Ambon. So this mother is a Muslim. He sell fish, and he need to sell fish to the Christian community. In that situation, there is a conflict between Muslim and Christian. So this mother have worried about herself, about her safety, but she has no choice other than to go to the Christian community and sell her fish. So she goes to the Christian communities, but she surprised when she was hugged by some mother in the Christian community, and this kind of story that people, I think, rare to hear. When Indonesia's people hear about the conflict between Muslim and Christian in Ambon, they often being threatened and afraid, but and they started to think that Ambon is not a safe place. But the story of a murder that found by the participant of our program, and they tried to conduct the video about this murder in the animation videos, and it's quite pretty giving a light of even though politically we are facing some kind of intolerance and the dynamic of this democracy, I think many of the grassroots level still have this kind of local wisdom that could help them to bridge the diversity and the conflict. I think yeah.
Yeah.
I'll try to remember some
Yeah,
of it.
thank you very much, Kang Rifan. Yeah, it reminds me also about the interreligious initiative in Makassar that Ina and I also conduct research. And then yeah, they always say that when they don't know first, like there's always prejudice, right? And then but after that, when they know already personal, then it's not like it seems. And I see at the moment, Ina, you raise your hand. Yeah, please, Ina, if you want to ask something.
Yeah, please allow me just to speak directly and to ask some questions. There's a lot of questions actually I want to ask, but basically first about I'm really curious about the Pesantren is not recorded. Your Pesantren Salamul Fal is not recorded even after century in Mora. I'm wondering what are the implications on it, which curriculum that the Pesantren use, and is there any things that make it change, like how it's different with other pesantren that because we know that Mora also give some fundings and also infrastructure aids to the pesantren and so on, especially also about the curriculum. I was just wondering about that. And the second one is actually about the current landscape of pesantren in Indonesia. As you say before, it is a fortress for religious moderations, but then we could see nowadays that pesantren is not only dominated and owned by Islamic traditionalists or local Islam that was in centuries, but also a new pesantren that is quite very different with what you explained before, which is the values of simplicity, the values of yeah, I forgot. But then we see the other pesantren is very glamorous, very, very expensive, and so on. And then I was wondering, is it the reason why before we know that the pesantren is the source, the education of pesantren create, give birth to many of Indonesian cendekiawan in Islamic intellectuals like Gus Dur, Nurholis Najib, and so on. And recently we are not we are not really heard many of those cendekiawan anymore, but less more popular one like Felix Xiao and so on that you heard. Do you think what are the reasons? Is it because there's this changing of education, the changing of landscape of pesantren in Indonesia, or is that how the community in Indonesia is like more attracted to those? Like very complicated. I was like, this is my contemplation sometimes because, yeah, just wondering, such a huge shift happen nowadays. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It makes me think as well. I never realized it is the situation, but yes, as you have pointed out, it is the current problem of the pesantren landscape. But I will start with why our family's pesantren. Actually, my family's pesantren is named Darul Falah, and Salamul Falah is my short course program within this pesantren. And I think the very idea why this pesantren has not been recorded in the Ministry of Religious Affairs because we haven't yet fulfill the administration process. I think that this is the simple thing, and this has happened to many traditional pesantrens. They comfortable with their own autonomously management within the pesantren, and they have no need in order to make their pesantren recorded because they believe that what they do is doing this educating children and people with Islam, and this kind of administration is just too much for them. I think that's one of the many reasons why traditional pesantren resistant of being recorded by the Ministry of Religious Affairs, although they know that Mora has funding to pesantrens. And interestingly, some pesantren even don't want to get this funding because this is the funding from the government, and some pesantren just consider this money is not what I can say. This it's not this as right as that they need. So they just prevent to get the fund. Um, but the curriculum in Salamul Falah, actually we tried to develop module. So in Salamul Falah we have 4 classes in terms of age group. The first class is for age 5 to 7. The second one is age to 9. 10 to 12 and 13 to 15. So we have 4 classes, and we try to develop a module that will be continuously developed through 3 years. So when the children join Salamul Falah for 3 sessions, they will have the complete module. And in each module, we have 10 topic, 10 subtopic from one topic, but the highlight of this curriculum is on pedagogical approach. So we try to make the learning environment as fun as possible. We try to conduct games. We try to make the student reflect on what they have learned after the day. So we will give them this reflection, and we ask them what they learned today. It could be something related to the content of the curriculum with the lifer, or some situation that perhaps they learn something from the condition during that day. And by using that, I tried to make them realize that they are part of the learning process. They are not going to madrasah to the classroom just for getting knowledge from other. They are part of this learning process. This is the curriculum of my pesantren. But lastly, about the value instilled in pesantren, which is simplicity in living, selflessness, and then the other two. Yes, in some respect, it is not really constructed fully, specifically when we talk about pesantren that has cost thousands for as the tuition fee. So basically the pesantren that Lukens will look at is the traditional pesantren, which almost free for santri. But nowadays there are many pesantren who as glamorous as we said earlier, and I think in some respect this new pesantren constructed to some extent the value of pesantrens, but not, I think, in simplicity in living, because they do not experience how to eat with merely food, and how to live in such a boarding room that is not suitable for number of people. So, so in pesantren we know tirakat. I don't know what is the English term of tirakat, but this is kind of the struggle process that faced by santri or student in order to deepen their spiritual journey and deepen their wisdom. And people who have finished or have done this tirakat is often come up as the intellectual Muslim intellectual with which is not only has the mastery of the knowledge but also had the charisma in order to create a social movement or to create a social change, as can be seen in the like of Gus Dur, Cak Nur or Cak Nun, but I think nowadays there are some intellectual Muslim who rise from pesantren who share this kind of charisma and mastery of knowledge, but we haven't find another Gus Dur. I think we will never find another Gus Dur. And if we talk about the Muslim intellectual which has this charisma of developing or engineering the social change with their mastery of Islam, I think we can often refer to the young intellectual Muslim, specifically coming from the milieu of pesantren in Central and East Java. I think rarely we find this intellectual Muslim come from West Java. I think even though I come from West Java, I think I must be honest and I make it as the autocritic for me. And part of the case, I think, because the infrastructure and the culture of pesantren in Central and East Java still maintain this kind of values of simplicity in living, selflessness, and so on and so forth. So yeah, so with this strict value in still and environment, I think the output that they produce quite have more power in terms of knowledge and charisma that they can engineer the social change. The latest example, I think we can see Gus Baha. I don't know if you have heard about him, but Gus Baha is such a representation of selflessness and simplicity in living. He doesn't care about branding or even the physical appearance, but everyone knows his knowledge is deep, and he can articulate his idea about Islamic moderation very clearly, and he can influence people accordingly.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer. Is there any other question? If not, I'm a little bit curious about the podcast trend, Kang Irfan, that also one of your work. Could you maybe tell us a bit more about that and how you, what like maybe you what topics that usually you talk about in your podcast, and then how you create the topic or with whom you deliver the podcast together.
Okay, so basically, I have so in podcast friend sometimes I deliver the articulation by myself, so it's kind of like a monologue, or but sometimes I also invite uh, people to join a conversation according to a current topic that we need to talk, we want to talk and to deliver in podcast. But I think I will mention two main program we did and we still doing now, which the first one is Faith and Pandemic. Faith and Pandemic is the program to provide a moderate and contextual narrative, Islamic narrative in response to pandemic, because one of the challenge of the handling of COVID-19 pandemic in Indonesia is related to the ultra conservative viewpoint of this COVID-19 that weaken and hinder the handling process. For example, when we need to do the social distances and we need to shut down the mosque for 3 or 4 weeks, some people try to call the government as anti-Islam, and how this COVID is the conspiracy to make the Muslims turn to be infidel because they shut down the masjid. But actually, in Islam, there are sources that could be can justify the need, the necessity to close the mosque in such a circumstance. So this is what we do in Faith and Pandemic, including we try to narrate the vaccine, because some people don't want to get vaccinated because they're not sure about whether or not this vaccine is halal or not. So we try to articulate that as well. This is the Faith and Pandemic, how we try to develop the narrative of moderate Islam in order to make people more cooperative in terms of this common and communal effort on fighting against this COVID-19. And another one was what I call the philosophy Salat. So because I believe that one of the case in Indonesia's Islam is the the missing link between the ritual piety with the social piety. So many Indonesian Muslims are ritualistically pious, but when it comes to social, political, and culture, this piety and ritual is not always represented or implemented. So I tried to do this philosophy of Salat in order to try to bridge and to articulate the values and the mission that God has tried to taught us through Salat. For example, like Salat is end up with the activity called Salam. So we like turn our head to the right and the left, and we recite Salam Alaikum. And I believe that this activity is not without the purpose. And I think that Salat is end up with the Salam means that after we conducted Salat, we need to do to implement to make a peaceful situation to ensure the safety of the people, because Salam means safety, means peaceful, and so on and so forth. So if people do Salat and they still attack people, innocent people, so there is something not right with their Salat. So this is some of our what we do in podcast Ren. In Philosophy Salat, I found around 11 values that are instilled through Salat for mission. Sorry, five missions, including ensuring the safety and peaceful coexistence within the diverse context, and two outcomes from Salat, from the self-control to the mindfulness and the sorry, mutmainnah. I don't know what is in English. Mutmainnah, relax, or what is it? Comfort, or yeah.
Your name, maybe.
Yeah, but my
Yeah.
All in rest, I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah, and then there is another question from Saskia here, and Saskia would curious to learn more about which ministries or which political actors are particularly engaged in and supportive of these efforts in the development plan. And then I also be interested to hear more about the dynamics between local wisdoms and local politics on one side and efforts on the national level on the other. Or maybe Kang Ivan, I believe you can read it if my voice is not clear. I'm sorry for the background noise.
Okay, so I think these are two questions. First is the ministries or political actors and which particularly engage in this effort. In terms of, I think, given this Islamic Federation become the policy, the political actors involved, including the Minister of Religious Affairs, of course, and some of the key leader in institution that has responsibility to ensure the safety of the nation, such as the army and the policy and the counter-terrorist agencies in Indonesia. So they work in different path, but I think they effort in ensuring the harmony and Indonesia's democracy and preventing this extremism and radicalization to cause another loss of lives. Another political actors I think involved in this Islamic moderation agenda. I think I also could mention the Islamic organizations such as Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah, although they are not the political actors individually and collectively, but their voice have political dimensions. Having political dimension, so I need to mention that as well, because when Habib Rizik and FAI started to campaign about NKRI bersyariah, the counter response coming from this key leader of NU and Muhammadiyah, stating that the concept is not religiously right and not relevant to be implemented. Another thing is okay, the dynamic between local wisdoms and local politics on one side and effort on the national level on the other. Let me think for a second. As far as I can think, this ultra conservative turn often sees the local wisdom and Indonesia's local culture as making Indonesia's Islam as syncretic. So it make the Islam not pure. So they always try to preach to purify Islam. So when we talk about the local wisdom and how it related to the politics, I think some of the action conducted by the Islamists is sometimes harm the local wisdom or local politics. I think I will mention the case of Sukmawati Soekarno Putri, which recite a poem called Kidung Indonesia, I think, and he started to criticize the understanding of Islam, which sees Arabized culture as more Islamic rather than the traditional culture of Indonesia, which is adopted by many Indonesian Muslim as well. And when she recite this poem, there are many reaction politically and socially, and even her poem become the triggering issues that forced the Aksi 212 in 2018. Although Sukmawati Soekarno Putri became the proponent of Aksi Bela 212 in 2016, her poem has made her become the opponent of the action in 2018. So this is the what I can say, the problematization of local culture in the light of this Islamist populisms. I don't know if I answered that question. Yeah, I'm quite confused with it.
Okay, thank you, Kang Irfan. And given the limited time, I think I will gather last round of question, and there is one already in the chat. It's from Purnama Sali that she's interested to explore the relationship between social media and visual dakwah or Islamic propagation in Indonesia today. Online and offline dakwah mutually complement and constitute each other, but which one is more effective nowadays for youth?
I think if we talk about getting the wider reach in terms of disseminating the idea, online platform is more helpful rather than the offline. But if we want to engage more, but with the small number, I think offline dakwah will be much more helpful. And I think for some cases, some of the ultra-conservative preacher has combined these two approach. They try to get a wider reach through an online propagation, and they also conducted offline activity in order to deepening their narrative, which is spread through online platform, and have some kind of loyal followers that obliged and adopt to their kind of Islamic thought. Yeah, I think it depends on the aims. If you want to get a wider reach, you use online media. If you want to get and engage a small number of follower, offline dakwah will be more helpful.
Okay, yeah, last round, maybe I will ask one more time if there is no more question from the audience, then I think I will conclude our lecture today. That actually also the last one of this digital lecture series. And thank you all for all the question, and once again to Kang Irfan for sharing your work to us. I hope we all enjoy the discussion, and it is indeed important topic if we reflect to the current situations in Indonesia, and when we see the rise of conservatism in education sector and growing intolerance in society, and also your work that also are very relevant to our situation now with the COVID, and then how the education has been digitalized and everything. So once again, I wish you all great day. Yeah, here is almost evening, and in Indonesia I think it's late in the night. And thank you very much everyone, and bye bye.